Thank you for joining us today for another exclusive interview sponsored by Immovet. Help your horses reach their maximum potential with Immovet's line of natural homeopathic products. I'm your host today, Aurelian Tremia. Today we're joined by Bruce Sherwin, director at New Zealand Thoroughbred Racing and a leading voice in international racing governance. As the sport grapples with globalization, emerging jurisdictions, and the challenge of balancing heritage with modernization, Sherwin brings a uniquely informed perspective on how racing nations can work together more effectively. We'll explore the barriers to international cooperation, the opportunities created through conferences and cross-border dialogue, and how technology, transparency, and support for developing regions can shape the sport's future. Stay tuned for a thoughtful conversation with one of the industry's most forward-thinking administrators. Great to have you here, Bruce.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So, Bruce, what do you see as the most significant barriers currently preventing seamless cooperation between international racing jurisdictions, and what concrete steps can be taken to dismantle them?
I don't believe we have significant barriers, but there are a number of challenges to our sport. Integrity and rules harmonisation are always areas we need to work harder on. For example, the differing whip rules are extremely challenging at the present time. Rules differ from country to country and even within countries. But this is probably linked to the respective regional challenges and perception in different areas. What is acceptable in Asia, for example, might not pass the threshold for expectations in European countries. So that's difficult to align and to get some commonality. We also have to be really vigilant around having a sport that's drug-free and a level playing field for all the participants. That's a non-negotiable. Another challenge on an individual level is self-interest. Countries and individuals have to be introspective. They have to understand and appreciate the relationships and interrelationships for the industry. We also need to collaborate better. Too often we work in silos. We need to share our learnings. So coming back to the question, in terms of removing barriers, we have great forums and contact points through the Asian Racing Federation and the International Federation, the IFHA, and their secretariats do a great job. They're terrific with their openness and engagement.
Beautiful. And how does the conference platform serve as a catalyst for meaningful dialogue and lasting partnerships, between established and emerging racing nations?
Yeah, the ARC, the Asian Racer Conference, is brilliant for collaboration, building relationships, making plans, short-term and longer-term. So in lots of ways, it answers the previous question around barriers and cooperation and steps forward. The ARC business program for the week, it invariably covers the key topics, the opportunities and the challenges we face for the industry to move forward. The ARC assembles some great speakers in terms of sports leaders, racing leaders, business minds, and these people are invariably very good and accessible with their time and a great asset in that forum. The ARC also becomes a terrific touch point for developing nations, especially those emerging, also making these contacts and then being able to call on these people at a later date is an invaluable asset for all industries and countries worldwide.
Excellent. And the theme, honoring tradition and shaping the future, suggests a delicate balance. How do you envision racing authorities preserving the sport heritage while embracing, necessary modernization?
Yeah, the sport's very foundation has been shaped by tradition. That said, I'm not convinced that it's a delicate balance between tradition and shaping the future. I think we face an evolving and challenging landscape, and changes very quickly, and we have to be prepared and embrace that change. I would actually prefer we push boundaries, explore, not all decisions we make will be the right ones. We'll make errors, but we'll learn along the way. And I think we have to push boundaries and challenge convention to move forward. So summing, yes, respect tradition and the great history of our sport, but be adaptive, challenge, evolve, and ultimately grow.
That is very true. Actually, in many industries, it is important to keep moving forward as well. That's very true.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
it's true of many industries and many sports.
exactly. And to be a little bit more specific, which emerging racing nations do you believe will have the greatest impact on reshaping the global thoroughbred landscapes over maybe the next decade, and why?
I think it's fitting that the next Asian Racing Conference is in Saudi Arabia. Without question, the Gulf states have been emerging and developing very quickly, led by the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, and more recently the growth in Saudi Arabia. One country I am intrigued by its development is actually China. We've seen Mr. Zhang of Yulong Investments and the massive investment they've put into the racing industry to build their empire. So we have waited for decades to see what would emerge from China, and we've seen through Mr. Zhang's play what could beckon in terms of the global industry. It's been a welcome and a refreshing take on industry investment out of China. But it's vitally important that the sport remains global, has a global footprint. Even in the Asian example, we've seen great growth in the Gulf states, but there's been a retraction with the loss of countries racing in Singapore and Macau, and even Malaysia's lost one of their main tracks more recently in Penang. So we have to be mindful to continue to grow, and these developing, emerging nations need all the support they can get.
And do you think it is still growing in countries like Europe, well, in countries like Australia, New Zealand, or part of Europe versus, the growth that is happening in the Middle East or Asia?
Around the world, we actually are seeing a reduced footprint in most countries. Foal crops are down. There's been a slight retraction in a number of countries in terms of the wagering handle. So there's a lot of challenges out there. And as some countries go by, it's disappointing. We lose Singapore and Macau, and it's important that we assess that there's smaller countries throughout Asia. I can only really speak of the Asian region more so than my knowledge of European nations, but there's a new track opening in the Philippines and in Thailand. There's some investment going in there, and Korea continues to grow. So there's some green shoots around Asia, and we have to foster and build their industries so they are part of the global footprint that is thoroughbred racing.
Excellent. That's amazing. And what role should technology and data sharing play in fostering greater transparency and collaboration between international racing bodies?
Yeah, it's an interesting space, isn't it? Look how far AI has come in the last 20 years and the phenomenal changes that we've seen there. Technology is obviously a rapidly evolving space. I think we can be accused of working in silos so often within the industry and within countries. So it's important that, coming back to the recurring themes of being cooperative and collaborative with our learnings, our data capture, and sharing the ideas and plans going forward. Comms, I'd like to see us share our stories better. That's a rapidly evolving space, how we tell our stories, and there's a lot of good stories out there. So touch points like Asian Racing Conference are also great in terms of technology and the growth of certain areas of the industry in terms of reaching out to new people, new ideas, and making those contacts going forward. So underline the value of the Asian Racing Conference Forum.
Excellent. Sharing data can definitely be very helpful in many ways, I'm sure, especially across different countries and jurisdictions, for sure.
Yeah, we have a great example in New Zealand at the moment. We're trying to work on the clubs capture the data of those who attend the race meetings, and how do we share and capture that information and use that beneficially moving forward?
Exactly. How can established racing jurisdictions better support developing nations in building sustainable racing industries without actually imposing a one-size-fits-all approach?
Yeah, that's a great question, and so much that one size is not going to fit all countries. I think the developing nations have a great resource in the Asian Racing Federation and the IFHA, the International Federation, and the secretariats that help them in terms of the resources they can tap into, and they should be encouraged to do so. The ARF Secretariat, for example, was underwritten by the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and we're very grateful for their input, and they are an invaluable resource, and they're regularly in touch with these developing and emerging countries, guiding them in the right directions around protocols and guidelines. So also, the developing nations have a representative on the board from each region at the International Federation Executive Council. I'm fortunate to be the Asian representative for the developing countries. So they get to learn the matters that are at the forefront of the industry, and they've also got a voice there when required.
Perfect. In your view, what does successful international racing cooperation look like in practice? And could you maybe point to any recent examples that embody this vision?
I think one of the great challenges to racing globally at present is the illegal betting operators in the markets available illegally, which contribute nothing back into our sport. So the development and the growth of the Anti-Illegal Betting Council has been a testament to international racing cooperation. The genesis of this council came from the Asian Racing Federation, and it has grown and transitioned into an international resource and is now under the umbrella of the International Federation, and that's an accessible resource to all emerging countries. And more recently, we've seen South Africa use the Anti-Illegal Betting Council to address illegal markets, and also the UK has called on their skills and their resources in the battle against the change to taxation and the gambling taxation there. So being able to articulate and note the threats from such things as over-taxation, over-regulation is a wonderful resource for the sport that we have. So there's a great example, the Anti-Illegal Betting Council.
Very interesting. And finally, Bruce, onto the last question. As Asia continues to grow in prominence within the global racing community, how do you see the balance of influence shifting between East and West in the years ahead?
I wouldn't buy too much into the East versus West competition and influence. I think the challenges, as we've spoken about, they resonate globally, while the Asian region is seeing great growth and development through the Gulf states. The retraction to the region and the likes of Singapore and Macau has regional impact. So we're going in the right direction, but there is positives and negatives at play. I think we all love to see great champions in action on the track and the crowds and followers that cheer them home. So we're all very much in the same melting pot. The sport is global, and while we take great pride in our country's performances, I think we ultimately share a common goal of what is best for thoroughbred racing and breeding. The sport has great respect in terms of, I think if the sport can articulate its integrity, its quality, and its welfare, and communicate that effectively, then we're all going to be winners.
Beautiful. Excellent. And just out of curiosity, what do you think of the New Zealand horse racing industry? How is it growing compared to maybe the rest of the world?
Yeah, New Zealand, positives and negatives. There's been tremendous positivity and uplift generated by outsourcing the wagering to a professional wagering operator, an Entain, a subsidiary of Ladbrokes. They took over the country's monopoly license, previously government run. So there was some low-hanging fruit there, and we've seen 2.5 years of excellent growth and turnover against a global trend. There's been a rise of 25% over those 2.5 years, so excellent results. And the upfront payment for the business from Entain enabled a significant increase to prize money, which was a much needed shot in the arm. That said, there's some major internal challenges. Infrastructure, particularly racetracks and facilities, are not at the standard across the country that they need to be at. It's a hangover from decades of underinvestment. So it's all good. We're trending in the right way. There's been good uplift at yearling sales in terms of turnover in the past 12 months. And hopefully this translates and starts to address what has been a declining foal crop. So yeah, positives and negatives, but the challenges aren't isolated to New Zealand, but the green shoots are promising.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It seems like challenges is happening everywhere, actually.
Yes.
Very true. Very true. And sometimes it can be really hard to compete against places like the Emirates or the Middle East, which is growing amazingly fast.
Yes. Yeah, we're also fortunate to have a major market. In fact, it is our key market, Australia, as a close neighbour, and then the turnover and the prize money generating out of Australia is important for New Zealand.
That is true. Well, excellent. Thank you so much for joining the call today. That was great.
Pleasure. Thank you. All the best.
All the best. Enjoy the rest of your evening, for sure.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.